The parable of the lost son. Then he said, a man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me. So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend the swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, how many of my father's hired workers who have more than enough to eat, but here I am dying of hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers. So he got up and went to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. But his father ordered his servants, quickly bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast. Because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he entered the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of his servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound. He became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. He said to him, My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.
Do you ever get bored with your average day-to-day existence? I sure do. Well, I should say I did. Then I decided to do something about it. You see, conventional wisdom says that you live your life, and when you're older, your parents pass away, and you get whatever's left, an inheritance. I'm sorry, this is good enough. I mean, come on, give me my money now so I can really enjoy it. So here's what I did. I walked right up to my dad and I said,
Dad, I want what's coming to me right now. That's what my younger son said to me. What's coming to me? Right at that moment, I'm thinking, yeah, I'll give you what's coming to you. Who does he think he is demanding things from me? Listen, I brought him into this world and I could take him out and make another one just like him. But he's my son, and I love him. And as much as it pained me, I decided to give him what he asked for and let him search for a better life on his own. Not long after that, he packed his bags, and the next thing I knew,
I was out of here. Kissed that boring place goodbye. There was a whole world waiting for me to discover it. So the first thing I did was...
he got lost. Hey, I love him, but he's no Magellan. In fact, I heard he had to stop 4 times for directions before he got out of town.
That's not true. It was 3 times. And one of those doesn't count because I couldn't understand what that guy was saying. I just nodded my head and left. And besides that, the only reason I wasn't good with directions is because someone never took the time to teach me.
Don't go there.
Anyway, that really doesn't matter. The point is, I found my way out of town and then I began to live it up. I had it all. More friends than I knew what to do with, the best clothes money could buy. I was eating like a king, and the ladies, what can I say about the ladies?
Here's what I can say. None of them were ladies. May have been women, yeah, but they weren't ladies.
They were 2 ladies. Most of them, okay, there was Sheila and Nancy. Yeah, they weren't really ladies. And Becca and Margot. Come to think of it, none of them were ladies.
As I was saying.
Wait, Connie. Now, Connie was a lady.
Oh, yeah, she was a lady, all right. Yep, a lady of the evening.
Okay, never mind. None of them were ladies. But the friends, the clothes, the food, man, they were awesome. Until...
his money ran out, right about the time the whole country hit a recession.
There wasn't any work to be found. Man, I tried. I really did, but I couldn't find any work. I searched and searched, and finally I got a job as a manager. Well, okay, not a manager, but an associate. Okay. I was a bacon preparation assistant.
Which means?
I took care of pigs. I couldn't believe my life had come to this. I'd wasted everything my father had given me. It wasn't really making any money to speak of. I had no place to live. I had no food to eat. There were days that I could have eaten the disgusting crabs I fed the pigs, but I couldn't. They wouldn't let me. So with hunger pains as a constant reminder of how I squandered my life away, I lived a life of misery, day after day.
After day. After day after day, I watched and I waited, and I ached in my heart, as only a parent can for his child. Most importantly, I never gave up on him. I believed that one day he would return. I just knew it would happen one day.
One day it hit me. I realized that back at my father's house, his lowliest workers were doing better than I was. They had a place to live, they had food to eat, they were living like kings compared to me. And so I wondered.
What if he never comes to his senses? What if he doesn't come back? What if I never see him again?
Again and again I ran things through my head as I made the long journey back to my father's house. I knew what I would do. I would humbly ask him to hire me as one of his workers. I couldn't ask for a handout, and I had no right to ask him to take me back as his son. But maybe he'd let me work for him. Just maybe.
Maybe today he'll come back home, was the thought that ran through my mind every day. Maybe today I'll be sitting here waiting and watching, and I'll see him appear off in the distance as he makes his journey back home.
Home? It's a word that describes so many things. Comfort, care, security, acceptance, love. And now, I was just a few hundred yards away.
It was a beautiful day. I was sitting out on the front porch enjoying a cool breeze when I saw him.
He stood up out of his chair, looked in my direction, and squinted his eyes to get a better look at me. I wondered what he was thinking. I wondered how he felt about me. Would he tell me, "I told you so"?
I told you so! I told you he would come back. None of you would listen to me, but I knew. I didn't ever give up on him. I knew.
I just knew I was going to be angry. Well, he was going to be angry. The closer I got to the house, the more I knew I had made the wrong decision. So I stopped.
He just stood there.
I couldn't move.
I couldn't just stand there, so
he jumped. He literally jumped off the porch. I'd never seen him do that before. Just like a little kid, all excited about something, and then it hit me. He was excited about me. So what did I do?
You know what I did next? I ran. My heart was pounding, and all I could do was run to him.
I'd never seen him run so fast. His arms stretched out as to say, "Welcome home!"
Welcome home! I shouted, but he was still too far away to hear me. But we kept running. We both kept running toward each other. I just wanted to jump in. I just wanted him to jump in my arms like he did when he was a little boy, so I could let him know that everything would be all right. And as he got closer, I could see tears running down his face.
He was crying.
Tears of joy. You know what my son did next? He jumped.
I actually jumped. I was so excited, so scared, so I jumped. And my father?
I caught him, and then
he hugged me. My father embraced me like only a father can. "I'm so sorry," I told him. "Please forgive me. I don't deserve to be called your son."
My son is back. Bring him some clean clothes. Put shoes on his feet. Prepare a meal. No, a feast. For my son will no longer live a life as an orphan. Today we will celebrate, for all of our hopes have come true.
I guess it was hope that kept me going. A hope that my father would have mercy on me. A hope that in some way he would take me back. A hope that I would be forgiven.
Forgiven. It's all forgiven. I will never bring it up again. There is no blame. There is no anger. There is nothing but joy. For my son was lost, but now he's found.
I'm Jeanette Hardin, and I can relate to the Prodigal Son because at one time, when I was about 30, I lost my faith in God. I thought that God didn't exist. I had seen a movie, which was the book of James or something like that, made for TV movie, and in the movie, someone had perpetrated a hoax where they had manufactured a book that they said was written about Jesus Christ, and it was written about the time of Christ. And what happened to me as I listened to this movie, I thought, well, maybe the whole Bible is a hoax, and maybe this whole thing about the Catholic Church is a hoax. And so there for several months, and maybe up to a year, I just thought that everything was irrelevant at church. I didn't quit going to church, and I didn't quit praying, but I quit believing, and I didn't know what I was going to do about it. And so I prayed that God would show me that the church really was His institution, that He really existed, that He really lived and died for us. And he started showing me in small ways. He would tell me, I would get this thought that I should go to St. John Newman, and I would hear just what I needed to hear. Or I would go to St. Elizabeth's one Sunday and hear just what I needed to hear. Or he led me to a meeting of Catholic daughters, and the prayer was just what I needed to hear. And so I just started seeing how God was guiding my life and directing me, and I started believing again. I know it's kind of crazy to think that you would completely think that the Catholic Church is a hoax, but I did. And I know that he forgives me, that he can forgive any sin. I really do believe that. And he has welcomed me back. God has welcomed me back. And not only that, I went from being a lukewarm Catholic to an involved Catholic. Okay.
All right. And I'll Hi, my name is Rob Holton, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the prodigal. I think that as Catholics, we understand the parable of the prodigal son very well, and I think as Catholics that we can identify with each character in the parable. The son who asks for forgiveness, the father who gives forgiveness, and the son who, the other son, the older son, who is reluctant to forgive. I think that we can identify with each one of those characters. I would like to talk about who I identify most in my life at this moment, and that is with the prodigal son, the one who asks for forgiveness. You see, I was born a Catholic and went to Catholic schools, went to college, and married in the Catholic faith, and left the Catholic Church soon after I got into the Army. After going to the Army, I went to graduate school, and we attended a Protestant church at graduate school. For I thought that I had difficulties accepting or had problems with the Catholic Church during my young adult years. We got involved with the Protestant church. I felt spiritual, but not necessarily in the Catholic faith. We just had problems with that. After graduate school, we went to Canada and participated in a Protestant church, but I always felt that there was something a little bit missing in my life. We immigrated back to the United States when our daughter was 5 or 6 years old, and came here to Lubbock and attended a Protestant church that had skits as part of its regular service. And it was a small church when we first started there, and being the only person that was over the age of 40, I was asked to play an older role in a skit, and so I did that. And lo and behold, I kept doing the skits and had a knack for acting. And in 1995, I had my first acting role in the community, in a play at the Cactus Theater. The next one was at the Lubbock Community Theater a few months later. And starting in 1995, I started doing 4 to 5 plays in the community a year for the next 10 years. Plays and musicals down in Garza Theater at Post and Katz Theater here in town. And a few plays I was asked to do at the Texas Tech in the Allen Theater. And during this time, we had continued to go to this Protestant church, but towards the last 5 years of doing the acting, we kind of left going to church, and I was concentrating all my life, all my waking hours, to work and to acting, and started to put my God was was down the list. I turned my back on God, and really my family was put on the back burner as well. Toward the end of about 7 or 8 years ago, it got to a point where I was doing so much acting that everything was secondary to what I was doing on stage. And I believe it was in the 2007 or 2008, I was doing two plays at one time, and it got so bad that I was taking sleeping pills to help me sleep, drinking a little bit of alcohol, and I ended up in the hospital with fatigue. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I spent the night in the hospital, and then went home afterwards. And after that, I really wasn't in the mood to do much theater or musicals at that time. And there was something really, really, really missing in my life. A year after that or so, I came to this church. And I began attending Mass here at this church, not taking communion, but just sitting and taking in the Mass. And about 6 years ago, I came in on a Saturday and was in line for reconciliation. Really, really, really scared. Really scared because there were a lot of things. Oh man, I tell you, I had a whole list of things, and I wanted to be the last one because I knew I was going to be in there for about a half an hour. It was with Father Bill, and man, that was hard. Oh gosh, that was hard. But I went in there and spent 29 and a half minutes bearing my sorrows and asking for forgiveness for all the wrongs I had done. And I can't, Father Bill was really excited. He was really excited. He said, welcome back, he said, and said aloud like he was enthralled. And then he told me about a little tale about somebody asking in confession about forgiveness and if they were really forgiven. And he says that when you ask for forgiveness, God hears it and God forgets it and never brings it up again. And so I identify with the prodigal son. And I know as a Catholic, having that sacrament of reconciliation is the promise to us that all of our sins are forgiven. And we can hope in that. And that's my story. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jessie Hernandez, parishioner here at Christ the King Cathedral, and we were asked to reflect a little bit on the prodigal son and the reading and which one do I remind myself of. And coming from a family of 10, 5 brothers, 5 sisters, I'm the 3rd youngest. I reflect a lot on the father because my father was the breadwinner, and I really looked up to him because he was able to take care of all of us. And of course, all the humbleness that he taught us, because we didn't have everything. You know, we would struggle, and you know, he did everything he could to put bread on the table and pay the bills, and he kept us together as a father. And I keep thinking about how the prodigal's father loved his son so much, and I think about how my dad loved us very much, every one of us. In a Hispanic culture, you know, the father is the hierarchy. You don't argue with him. He may be wrong, but you don't argue with him, and you respect your elders, you respect your parents. And my dad is also from a large family. I had 11 uncles and aunts from his side. I had 8 more from my mom's side. So the value of family was really important, and was given to me at such an early age. And I remember in my youth and going to my uncle's ranches and just growing up and knowing that I was going to be okay because
my uncle took care of me or my aunt took care of me, and whatever the case might be with our family. But every time I came home, I knew that I was going to be okay because my dad was there for me. And as I grew older, I picked up all those beautiful values and the love of family structure, which is missing so much in this society. And it's so important to have it. It's just, we live better lives when we're family, folks, and it's just that simple. And when we did the skit for the Prodigal Son, and I think about my dad and how Rob did a great job of presenting the father and his emotions and his love, because my dad was pretty much like that. And he expressed his feelings to me, and it didn't take long for me to know what was right and wrong, because he loved me enough to to straighten me out, and I turned out to be a good person, I hope. But in those cases, as you get older and you have your own family, and all those beautiful things he taught you, and the values of life and love of children and wife and providing, and I was more than happy to take on that job, because I loved it, and I knew that my dad always wanted what was best for me, and he'd always check on me, and as I got older and I started to have my own kids, there was this point in my life where I didn't get to raise my kids like I wanted, and I would only see them on every other weekends, those kind of occasions. But when I did, I poured everything I had for those kids, in my heart, in my activities, and anything I could do for my kids, because that's just what the prodigal father did for his boys. He gave them everything. The one chose to leave, the one chose to stay, but my dad gave those values to me, and when I had my own kids, I taught them as much as I could. I brought them to church, and I led them towards Christ, and some things you just can't control, especially when your kids are old enough to do their own thing. And in this case, that's exactly what's happened. But my kids are all grown up now, and the one thing I have in my heart is my father's teachings, and I'm just grateful that my kids are good kids. They're great kids. They're very good kids, good-hearted kids, and I would like to think that whatever my father taught me, I taught my children, so they could pass that on in regards to just teaching of love and family, and those are the things I draw out of that scripture, because ultimately God the Father is the one who loves us, and he teaches us, and he gives freely. And my prayer always is that the family will come back together, and we become one big family again. Thank you.
I am Gilbert Salazar, and I'm a member of Christ the King. And I've been coming here to church since 2004. I'm a convert, and I'm a lector here at the church, a Eucharistic minister, and I also am a member of the Knights of Columbus. And the message I got from the story of the prodigal son are forgiveness, acceptance, and unconditional love. In the story of the prodigal son, his father forgave him for all the wrong that he did and accepted him back into his life. Regardless of the dissipated life that his son experienced, he still loved him unconditionally. Just as God will never turn his back on you and will always love you no matter the severity of your sins. The story of the prodigal son and my Christian faith have some similarity. Like the prodigal son, I too became lost without faith until I was touched by the Holy Spirit. I had an empty feeling inside. I would attend Mass with my wife, but was only going through the motions. One day, God took over and changed everything. Afterwards, I became more interested in the Catholic religion Next thing I knew, I was attending RCIA classes. And after the first class, I knew then, this is the direction that I want to go. During confirmation ceremony, the white garment was placed on me, just as the robe was placed on the prodigal son. I felt like things started changing. I made new church friends, and that turned into a Catholic church family. I became a part of something very large, very special. I had no idea it would be like this. Being surrounded by people who care about you and accept you, no matter where you came from. I became a CCE teacher, a Eucharistic minister, and a lector. I also joined the Knights of Columbus organization, and it made me a better father, a better husband, and a better Catholic man. Believe me, there's no substitute for the way I felt coming into the Catholic faith. Just as the prodigal son felt when he came home. His father accepted, loved, and forgave him, just as God loves us and forgives us. I have heard of many situations where a father never forgives his son and turns his back on him. There is no second chance. God will never turn his back on you, regardless of what you have done to displease him.
As long as I can remember, I have loved the gospel story, The Prodigal Son. The thought of a merciful, compassionate father was very appealing to me. My father was rather stoic and standoffish. He never really hugged me the way I wanted. I was introduced to Rembrandt's painting, The Return of the Prodigal Son, during an Encounter Catholicism session at least 5 years ago. That evening, we heard about the spiritual aspects of Rembrandt's work. I particularly remember the speaker that evening emphasizing that the merciful Father had one hand painted as a masculine hand and the other painted as a feminine hand. This was Rembrandt's way of pointing out, according to the speaker, that God the Father was both masculine and feminine in qualities. We, both male and female, are made in the image of God. I mentioned this to my friend Sue as we met one day at her house. She pulled out a copy of Henri JM Nouwen's book, The Return of the Prodigal Son, A Story of Homecoming. It has a picture of Rembrandt's painting on the front cover. We checked out the hands of the forgiving Father, and sure enough, to us, one appeared masculine and the other feminine. Sue asked if I wanted to borrow and read the book. Of course I did. From the beginning, the book fascinated me, and I quickly bought my own copy. Henri Nouwen first encountered Rembrandt's painting, The Prodigal Son, on a poster in his friend Simone's small L'Arc workspace in Trosly, France. Nouwen was so moved by the intimacy of the old man touching the boy's shoulders that he was completely distracted from their conversation. The scene reached Nouwen in a way he had never experienced before. This encounter came after an exhausting 6 weeks lecture tour. The comforting embrace of the Father was exactly what he needed and longed for at that time. He wanted to be embraced like that. Simone said, "Maybe you should have your own copy." You can buy it in Paris. The next 3 years, through the reproduction on the poster, Nouen related to Rembrandt, his fellow Dutchman, as a special companion. This companion took him through the transition from his teaching position at Harvard University and his demanding lecture and travel schedule to living in Trossley, L'Arc community on a 1-year trial basis. He was seeing if he was suited to ministry to mentally handicapped men and women. In 1986, friends offered Nouen an opportunity to travel to the Soviet Union to visit the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, where the original of Rembrandt's painting was on display. Nouen was thrilled with the opportunity to see his favorite painting in person. The painting meant so much to him, he wondered if he would be disappointed with the original. Then, when he saw the long lines waiting to enter the museum, he wondered if he would be able to fulfill his deep longing to sit before the picture for an extended time. Nevertheless, his friend's mother, with whom they stayed, was good friends with Alexei Bryantsev, who was the head of the restoration department at the Hermitage. Alexei offered Henri Nouen the opportunity to sit before Rembrandt's Return of the Prodigal Son for hours. He was not disappointed. As the sun from the window danced across the painting, Henri Nouen saw the complexity of Rembrandt's work. Rembrandt considered himself the lost son. In his early years, he was filled with himself and enjoying life. He had wasted years focusing on all the wrong things. Initially, Nouen identified strongly with the younger son. His friend challenged him, saying, "I wonder if you're not more like the elder son." This prompted Nouen to ponder his life in a completely new way. Yes, he was the oldest child in his family and always lived a dutiful life. He decided to become a priest at age 6 and never changed his mind. Now he could see his subtle self-righteousness and resentments. Now he could see that, as the elder brother, he was also just as lost as his younger brother, just as in need of a father's compassionate embrace. Nouen discovered that the real beauty of the painting, the return of the prodigal son, is that in our brokenness, God embraces and forgives us just as the merciful Father embraces his wayward son. Henri Nouen divided his spiritual journey into 3 phases. The first phase was that of being the prodigal son, feeling quite lost and desperately needing to be hugged. The second phase was when he recognized himself as the elder brother, his thinking and his feelings filled with resentment. He was just as lost as his younger brother, filled with a dark interior place and suffering inner anguish. The final phase was initiated when his friend Sue, who had introduced him to the L'Arc communities, said, "Whether you are the younger son or the elder son, you have to realize that you are called to become the father." Nouen was on his way to becoming a father who can welcome children home without asking questions and without expecting anything in return. Nouen had tasted the immense joy of children being welcomed home as he served as pastor to the L'Arc community in Toronto, ministering to mentally disabled adults. Today, in this presentation, I have focused on the introduction to this book. To me, Nouwen's love for Rembrandt's painting, The Return of the Prodigal Son, is key to his insights on the parable, which he shares in the book. Also, it is pivotal to his spiritual growth. The three main figures in Rembrandt's masterpiece provide the structure for the book. Henri JM Nouen invites us to embark on this spiritual journey with him. In my opinion, this book is well worth reading. Henri Nouen took me on a journey which challenges and inspires me to be a better Catholic Christian, more accepting, more trusting, and more forgiving.